My name is Joshua, and I'm the Tribune. And I'm here to talk to you guys about the strategy of losing on purpose. Now, this really could be very confusing because this is, again, another thing that is not really talked about too much about God and His character. That God actually will not only ask you to make decisions that make you look like to everybody you're losing, okay? He will also actually make you lose on purpose for His benefit and your benefit. This is something that takes faith, and it's something that if you walk with God, it's impossible not to see this. And the reason why I'm telling you this is kind of like my last video, is because I want it to be easier for you to navigate. Because it's guaranteed that you will hit a point where God's like, I want you to do this. And you're like, what? Do what? This? Yes, that. Do that. But it looks like everybody's going to think I'm failing. And I feel like I'm failing if I do that. He's like, do it. So this is something that I was astounded by when I first experienced this with God. And actually I was astounded by it for quite some time. Because unless you understand what's happening, it's impossible to get over the shock of it. Because these processes take time. Now remember, we are building. We are actually building a relationship with God first. And second, we are building a purpose and a blueprint. Now, in order to get this blueprint from God, you have to be in the correct situation for that. And only He decides what that means for you. So, since He has an individual agenda for everybody, and we all fit together in this agenda, in the overall agenda, the grand scheme of things, He actually He has places assigned for you. He has places that and seasons that aren't that palatable to what we're used to our senses, to our desires, things like that. This is how it is. So the important thing to remember about this principle is that it's about trusting God. It's about getting to know God, getting to know His character, trusting that if He orders something that would make you look like you're losing, then you need to trust Him and do it, knowing that there's a reason for it, that you're going to have ultimate victory, that the victory will be so much sweeter and more wonderful after you come out of a place where you put yourself into a dungeon. This happens in the scriptures, but people don't talk too much about it because it's scary to people. It's scary because they don't understand what the reason for it is. Now, if God asks you to do something that looks like you're losing, you have to understand that He is with you in that. And something that helped me when I was looking like I was losing on purpose was understanding that He is very invested in reaching people and to show people that He's real, one, and two, that He's awesome, He's the best ever, and He's super powerful, which is an understatement. He's the most powerful of anything we can ever imagine. It is in His best interest to show this. So when I was in these seasons where I was in a dungeon, sometimes purposely I put myself into a dungeon because He said to. I realized that He had a bigger plan, and I had to just be obedient. And obedience in these situations is the most valuable thing to Him. It's the most valuable thing to us and Him. Obedience leads to contentment. Because when we're obedient, God will meet us in that place, and He will actually minister to us and say, listen, I'm going to now explain some stuff to you. You are now becoming my friend. I'm going to explain to you why I had you to do this. I'm going to explain to you my secrets. I'm going to tell you, now that you put yourself in a dungeon, I'm going to tell you in this quiet place that this is actually a conference room. This is not a dungeon, it's a conference room. This is a place where I want to meet you in secret so that I can minister to you and tell you very wonderful things that you could never imagine before. And the reason why it's a secret is because nobody likes following people to a dungeon. So, you will have privacy. This is what happens. This is the reason. Privacy, and you get to know you get to have your relationship grown with God, and on top of that, you get to prepare. You get to prepare in private, in secret. You get to actually work through certain things that you need to work through, and that's really important to be able to sustain yourself when He brings you out. Now, something that is very confusing about this process is, how do you know when God's ordering you to go into a dungeon or when God put you in a dungeon? Now, this is how you know. There's provision there. He takes care of you. That's how you know. And He meets you there and you grow. That's how you know that he's doing this. And that's how you know that he really does value obedience. Because what happens is when you're not obedient in these situations and you refuse to do them, then what you're doing is you're missing out on the commission. You're missing out on what He had for you. You're missing out on the preparation and the wisdom that you need to move forward in what He's ordered for your life. So there's certain things that are going to come in your life down the road that He knows about. So what He does is He's going to prepare you for those things. Remember that I told you before that the difference between people who are working with God in this way compared to the people who are not working with God or are still doing things in the world are they don't have a godly strategy. They don't have wisdom. They're intelligent. That's different. But what I'm talking about is godly wisdom, knowing checkpoints, knowing that this is going to happen over here somewhere, and I need to be ready for it. And I'm ready for things that nobody even know. They don't even know they exist yet. This is the difference. And where do you get that? You get that from being obedient to God. Not only in going into situations where it looks like you're losing and making decisions like it looks like you are losing to everybody else, but also by following His instructions when you're inside of those places and being content and patient. This is how you become friends with God. Now, anybody can be obedient to God on things that make them happy. What's the difference? Why do we feel like we only should be obedient to God when we're happy about it? There's no distinction in that. One of Satan's children would actually go ahead and be obedient to God if they're happy about it. What makes us different is we actually do the hard things. We are obedient when we're not comfortable. We're obedient when we're afraid. We're obedient when God says, listen, I need you to go sit in that cave and I'll meet you there. So if God asks you to do something that your friends or your family say, well, that's against what we taught you. Our family doesn't do things like that. And these could be very logical things. That's the thing. You need to be obedient to God. And that's the test. That is a huge test. And that test has to be passed by His generals. It has to. Because you need to obey God over your mom, over your dad, over your best friend, over your grandmother, over anybody. You need to obey God when you actually inflict yourself and you don't even like it. And you feel totally afflicted because of your own decision, because you're being obedient. He's looking for people like that. Those are the kind of people who get treasure. Those are the kind of people who He calls His friends and actually goes and shows them secrets about things that nobody can find. He actually has treasure held in caves. He has treasure beautiful, beautiful treasure that he has reserved for his people. But how do you get to see this treasure and start excavating it? Through going into the cave that he hid it in. He's not going to bring it out of the cave. You need to come in the cave with him. Because the difference is, this is when you talk about treasure, don't think about something you could just go and pick up and walk out with. No, you're going to need strategy of how to get this thing out. You're going to need to have strategy how to use it. God will give you something where you don't even know how to use it. It's something wonderful. What is this for? This is so wonderful that I don't even know where I could use this thing. There's nothing for it. In the world, I can't find anywhere where I can use this thing. What do I do with it? He's like, this is why we're here. This is why we're here. And that's in the cave. That's when you, and it's really a conference room, I said. It's a conference room. Now, this is something very important to know about how this process goes with God. God is very, very into setting booby traps for imposters. Okay? People who think they're going to get these things and not go through this process and not go through being a Christian, even acknowledging Jesus Christ as Lord, which he is, go through the training. Those people who think they're just going to get these things and get this relationship with God without being proved and tested, it's not true. God says booby traps for those people. So, and even the people who are on the way to becoming his friends, he will test them. There are traps. You will walk into the cave and see a spider, a giant spider, in your path. And he's going to say, come forward. Keep coming. Now, somebody who's too afraid of spiders and they don't trust God, aren't going to come through, and then that's where they stop. But he knows who's going to come through. And anybody who's listening to this and their hearts just stirred, you are chosen to go to this place with him. But as wonderful as you feel about it, I want to prepare you for the booby traps that you will survive, and also the unbelievable treasure that comes from surviving, because you have to have faith that it's there. So God is so awesome that he already plans these things out. He already knows every little step. All he's asking for is obedience. If we can have obedience and we can follow him where he wants to go and he wants to take us, then it's impossible to lose. You cannot lose. Even if you get in a situation, cannot lose, it's impossible. Even if you make a mistake along the way, correct it, you're still on the track. It's impossible to be disqualified when you're being obedient. It's impossible to not make it. It's unthinkable. It might feel like you're not going to make it, and it will. It'll feel a lot of different things. But that's what the training's for. Because creating with God is full reliance on God. It's full reliance on his abilities, full reliance on his ultimate wisdom, full reliance on his power, full reliance on his creativity. So when you sit down at the table with God and he starts teaching you these kind of things, and he starts teaching you about himself, teaching you about you, teaching you about the mission, and start giving you a blueprint about yourself and what he wants to do in your life, then you have to respect who he is. How are you going to respect who he is if you don't go through the cave with him? That is impossible. You have to go through the cave. And it's worth it. It's totally worth it. That's an understatement. You'll come out tailor fit. You'll have a tailor fit. You will have exactly what you need. And the best thing you'll have is your relationship with God. So in any situation that comes up, you can actually ask him questions. And he wants to tell you. This is what it means to do opposite, against what anybody else is saying. And he will test you. If you think somebody who is just just for you and they're just your biggest supporter, he will make sure they are the ones who turn on you. He will make sure those are the ones who say, "You shouldn't. Are you sure God said that? Maybe you shouldn't do it." I don't know. No. He'll say, "Yep, I want to do that," and I'm going to use that person who you think they'll support me through anything. And it will be something that you think is good. He'll put it in your heart and it'll be amazing. I'm in it. And then you're like, that's how you know you need to do it. And you'll know in your heart. I'm talking to these kind of people, the kind of people who want things that even your closest people would look at you kind of crazy. People who know you be like, that's weird. I'm talking to those kind of people. Because again, if that's not happening, I argue, are you actually talking to God about your purpose? Because it should be very unusual. It's part of the test. And it's amazing. Now, those same people will be very excited later when it's time. But he'll shut that down so that you can prove that you want to hear from God and nobody else. So go into the cave and understand that God does do opposite. And his strategy is opposite a lot of the times. Hail Jehovah.